Hello! Just recently I did the review of the little Pavo 25 from Beta FPV, and one of the things I had there is the RunCam thumb, though I didn't want to touch on that one while I was reviewing the frame because it was mainly about that. But now it's time to go and look at the footage that was on this RunCam thumb and take a look and see what happened. Now the quick history of this is I started out on 5-inch quad, and first I had their plastic surround which seemed to get an awful lot of vibrations. Then I switched over to their included TPU mount, which seemed better but not great, and then I figured perhaps it was the 5-inch and the kind of vibrations that got that wasn't kind to it, so I decided to put it on this frame, which is just basically 2.5-inch props and has a different kind of vibration tendency because of the way that works. Printed out a new mount because this is a GoPro style connector. We needed to do something else there, and it's printed nicely in TPU with my new printer. If you saw my Creality Simoon video, really happy with this. Nice and flexible, hoping that deadens the vibrations. So what I'm going to do in this video is upload the footage I've got to my computer, have a look at how it looks raw, compare it to the other ones we've got, and then look at Gyroflow and see if that improves things or makes it worse, or basically have we got a decent camera or a workable camera out of this. Now since I started doing this, RunCam have brought out the RunCam Thumb Pro, which is more expensive at about $90. I haven't watched any videos about it yet, so I don't know how it performs. Unless they've changed the internals of it, I'm a little bit wary because I still think it's going to get those shakes in it. It needs some sort of electronic image stabilization, although maybe they've upped the processing power so it can squirt out the gyro data quickly enough for Gyroflow to be able to process it. It seemed like people kept telling me like, oh, you need to make more points, you need to manually align all your points, and essentially a way of saying you need to spend, you know, hours and hours in Gyroflow. That's not what I want to be doing. That you might as well just buy a GoPro and stick it on there if this is not going to work. So it's kind of last ditch effort on using this with Gyroflow. It may or may not work. Let's get into the footage and let's see what happens. And the first thing to look at is the raw quality from the RunCam thumb on the new quad, and this was my first battery. Problem with this one is I've got the filter basically hot glued onto the lens, and it was a bit dark in the woods, so it's coming out a little bit noisy, but you can see that it's not shaking around. So I think, you know, with or without the ND filter, it's vastly improved on this smaller frame than it was on a 5-inch. On the same day I did this little run here, which was a sort of a distance test on the quad. This is a bit better because there's a little bit more in the open. You can see there's a couple of little shakes here and there. This is mostly my flying, a little bit of camera shake. Again, I think it's vastly improved on how it was flying on a 5-inch, but then again, you know, this quad isn't exactly fast. It's fighting against the wind and it's working as a big sail because it's a little cine quad, but I guess that's kind of what you might be putting this thing on rather than a 5-inch, it would seem. But there's a couple of shaky bits in here that might be interesting to look at, whether we look at Gyroflow or not, and I'm kind of doing this live, if you like. I haven't decided what I'm gonna look at and remove and try with Gyroflow or whatever. I just thought I'd have a quick look through the footage, show you what sort of differences I've got and what we could do with them. Again, on that same day I went in a different area of the woods. This isn't so bad because we're still got the ND filter on, but there's a lot more natural light coming through, so it's not as noisy. Again, there's some kind of jerky movements, but I have to say that's my flying rather than anything else. I'm trying to kind of see where I am and seeing where the ghost branches are. Once again, I wouldn't be ashamed of showing this footage because it's smooth enough just in the raw, and I kind of feel like I'm pretending if I'm trying to stabilize and saying, look, I can fly better than I can. But let's see what the stabilization looks like. So I think the best footage to sort of look at and see if Gyroflow can do anything with is this one. I went out another day and it was quite a windy day, and this is only a little quad, so this is really blowing around, and again it's much better than it was on the 5-inch, but you can definitely see a couple of shakes and movements that I didn't want in that one. So I think we can definitely look at what we can do about this and see if there's anything decent and see if we can improve it at all. And it's always a little bit of a worry looking at this. I look at this on my editor window and it looks one way. I look at it on full screen and it looks another way. Even after I've done a video and upload it to YouTube, YouTube's going to do stuff with it. So I'm just hoping what I can see you guys are able to see as well. But let's crack on and jump into Gyroflow and see what we've got. What I'd do with that is just try and stabilise that small piece of footage I showed you. So I said, look, let's try and get 10 points. Let's auto sync this. We've got a lens profile from someone called Stephen Smith, who said he created it for RunCam Fun. From feedback other people told me, they said don't use the low pass filter. You get a lot of conflicting info here. And so after doing that, and let's have a static zoom of, I don't know what that is. Let's see what happens. So starts off okay. And then what the hell's that? It's jiggling about all over the place. And yeah, essentially it looks worse. This is just by asking it to get auto synchronization and seeing what happens when we play it. And you can see it looks absolutely bloody awful in most places. So let's find a bit where it goes a bit mental, which is about there, which suggests that sort of this sync point here is wrong in some way. So let's see what's going on. So if we zoom into here, I mean, what we can see from that is this doesn't really follow, does it? That sync point is not for that bit. If anything, this blue line, which is, what is blue? Blue is Z. That seems to be trending downwards, and over here it's going upwards. So that looks more likely to be, looking at that graph, it seems to be over here. So let's see if we can just move that along. Okay, so the red kind of follows a bit, the green not so much, the blue yes, I guess. Let's look at the next sync point, what we've got going on here. Now my original idea was to show you how I went through Gyroflow and try to fix things, but overwhelmingly I just can't do it. I open points, sometimes they're quite nicely synced. I'm like, that's a good one, that's kind of recognised it. I go to the next point and it will show me absolutely nothing in common with the last one. And it's like, how do you recover from somewhere that just doesn't do anything like the original gyro has? It's like when the optical doesn't match at all, how much time do you have to invest in doing it and trying to fix it manually? And I went through a whole bunch of clips, and some of them, the points seemed to match up really, really nicely. And I was like, oh, that's brilliant. This is going to be a great clip. And then the next one you get to, it's kind of like, well, you can kind of see where it was going with this, but it didn't quite work. You can see there's sort of just going out, but the different axes are going out at different rates. So what you end up doing is correcting one, and then you have to put in a new sync point and then try and sort out that part of the graph, and then you look further on and there's yet another sync point that's gone. So then you add a manual point and you try and move the graphs together, and you eventually get something that kind of looks like it should go. But how much time are you supposed to spend on this thing that's supposed to magically sort your clips out? It just seems like too much time to me. But I went ahead and I put in what I think was reasonably good footage from my unstabilized stuff, put it into Gyroflow, gave it 10 data points. I said auto sync this, exported the results. I didn't try and play around with it because at this point I was already fed up, and this is what you get. And I have to say, the raw unstabilized footage looks pretty good. I was fairly happy with that. The Gyroflow stuff looks horrendous. It really does look terrible. Not only is it putting in vibrations and glitches that weren't there because it's unable to sync the gyro data with the optical data, it also seems to occasionally, every so often, it flashes up like some corruption in the frame. Looks like there's glitching, and I'm not sure what that is. I can certainly put down the fact it can't stabilize nicely down to the camera, because we all know that this camera is not particularly great. It's got a very strange lens. I don't think the gyro data that's being output is up to spec. Basically, it can't write the stuff out fast enough to be in sync. But that sort of glitching with the images, I don't know, that looks like it could be Gyroflow to me. I really don't know what to say about it. It's like the camera's doing okay on a small quad which doesn't have that many vibrations. Certainly much better than a 5-inch. At the same time, there's so many people that are swearing from Gyroflow's results. That can't be a bad thing either. My best guess is here that RunCam have rushed this camera out. They've tried to jump on this Gyroflow bandwagon. It hasn't worked because they've rushed it out. Their follow-up, this Pro model, I'm sure is going to work better because they've probably had some time to actually think about it and design it properly. But as far as the regular RunCam thumb goes, you know, I don't like it. It's okay if you put it on a small quad with not many vibrations. It looks like a cheap camera because it is one. But honestly, I wouldn't bother with Gyroflow. Now, people can go ahead and correct me all they like. I have to say, there's only a certain amount of time I will spend playing around with software to try and make things look better than they are. I'm not spending hours and hours and hours on a single piece of footage trying to sync data up so a relatively low resolution crappy camera can look a bit more stable than it was. I just don't think it's worth it. If you're doing some commercial filming and you're already on GoPros and it's, you know, it's already running hyper smooth and you feel you want extra stabilization, then by all means Gyroflow might be a good thing. But for this camera, absolute pants. Look, I went into this with an open mind. I thought I could get Gyroflow to work with the RunCam thumb. Just doesn't want to. It's beyond me. The actual image we're getting from the camera now on this sort of frame is pretty good. I think smaller frames equals is going to work better because the sort of frequency of the vibration is much different, and certainly the TPU mount works. But it still looks like a cheap camera. It's a camera with some weird lens distortions in the side, and I don't particularly like it. And even if Gyroflow was working perfectly, because it has to zoom in, you're looking at a 1080p picture that you're squeezing and basically taking the sides off and zooming in, and you're losing definition there. It strikes me that if you really want stabilized video which is good quality, you need to buy yourself a GoPro. Yeah, even not the GoPro 10, you can pick up a GoPro 7 for cheaper now, and they're hyper smooth, nice. Doesn't like working with Gyroflow. I know the 7 looks a bit weird, but I'm done trying to play with Gyroflow and this thing to try and get the best out of it. I have no doubt it's great software under the right situation with the right input data, but this thing sucks balls for working with Gyroflow. I'm not doing it anymore. I'm done with it. I'm sure the Pro version is going to be better, but I'm in no rush to go back and go through all that again, so I'm going to end it here. And happy flying, and I hope you have more success than I do if you're flying this thing and using this software. Bye for now. Well, you've made it to the end of the video, so thanks once again for watching. If you like what you saw, then please consider subscribing, and if you really like what you saw, then be sure to check out the link to my blog for a variety of ways in which you can help support this channel.